more than my home state. So this speech is my love letter to the state of Michigan. To stand here and represent the state that I love on the floor of the US Senate is the greatest privilege of my life. Second, my goal for my time in office is to address what I believe to be the existential threat of our time, to my state and to all Americans, the threat of a shrinking middle class. Now, I'm a national security person by training. I'm what's called a 9/11 baby. I happened to be in New York City on my second day of graduate school when 9/11 happened. I was recruited into the CIA right out of grad school, and I served 3 tours in Iraq alongside our military before serving at the Pentagon. I served proudly under presidents, both Democrat and Republican. I've come face to face with some of the greatest threats facing our country, but I believe in my bones that the single greatest threat today to our national security is not coming from abroad, but coming from the very real threats that come from that shrinking middle class. So my goal as a senator is to deliver for Michigan's middle class, to expand it, to secure it. That mission is personal. Michigan is where my family achieved that very American dream. My great-grandfather, at 13 years old, came through Ellis Island, not speaking English. He ended up starting a meat company, moved to Michigan, and built that business and built an iconic hot dog that Michiganders have enjoyed for 60 years. Michigan has been the place where hard work means something. It's where the middle class was literally invented, where you could work at an auto plant and afford the car that you were building. That was a revolutionary idea at the time. It shouldn't be revolutionary now. So as a US Senator, my highest priority is to help make Michigan a place where that American dream is achievable again. Today, too many Michiganders are falling out of that middle class. Too many families can't get in at all. I live on my family farm in Holly, Michigan. Growing up, I was surrounded by families whose path to the middle class ran through Michigan's factories, our farms, our small businesses. We are people who build things and grow things. People proud of their role in manufacturing Americans' future. Our cars, our tanks, our food. People who, like my great-grandfather, were prepared to work hard for success and often achieved it. But over the years, I've watched younger generations of those same families live a very different story. Parents can't provide for their kids what was provided to them. That fishing cabin up north that dad had, the son can't have. A trip to Disneyland, can't do it. Across Michigan, there are so many families who feel like hard work doesn't seem to be enough anymore. No matter what your political views are, it is just a fact that the middle class has shrunk over the past 40 years. And I've seen firsthand what happens next. When people feel like they can't get ahead, when they can't provide for their kids what was provided for them, they feel anger, they feel shame, they lose their dignity, and they look for something or someone to blame. In a multiracial, multi-ethnic experiment in democracy, people end up blaming people who don't look like them, or speak like them, or pray like them. I've seen this up close and personal, how that kind of anger and suspicion can tear communities apart. If you want to understand how we got to this moment in our politics, this angry, vitriolic, polarized moment in American history, all you have to do is understand that shrinking middle class. So even among today's chaos, especially now, there are things we have to do, simple things, to bring back that middle class and make it thrive. This is my North Star. It will guide my work in the Senate. Okay, so how do we do that? Our government certainly needs to change. I don't think it's hard to understand that our government is not working for a majority of Americans, not just Republicans, Democrats as well. And you have to hear that loud and clear. Fundamentally, I believe that government needs to get back to the basics. No one cares about your trick plays if you don't have your fundamentals right. Government needs to set the conditions for success, and Michiganders and Americans need to work hard to achieve that success. These basics are jobs that pay you enough to save every month, healthcare you can actually afford, a home you can call your own, schools that prepare our kids for the workforce, energy to power our lives, an environment we can pass on to our kids, and safety and security from fear. That is it. First, on jobs. We need job creation for Michigan's middle class to create the jobs of the future. Imagine that the middle class is basically a ship at sea. For the better part of 40 years, it's been taking on water, and now we're about to hit a Category 5 hurricane in the form of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has the potential to change our economy more than the internet did. Think about that. Productivity will go up, jobs will be gained, but jobs will also be lost. Maybe not Michigan jobs at first. Entry-level college jobs like paralegals or accountants are probably first on the list, but change is coming and we need to be ready. Job creation in the era of artificial intelligence means supporting our small businesses. Small businesses employ half of all Americans. They are intrinsic to the American dream. It's about betting on yourself. And we need to own the fact that it is hard to start and succeed as a small business. We need to make life easier for Michigan small businesses. Second, we need to bring critical industries and critical supply chains back home to the United States. Michiganders understand this better than most because of what we do, our manufacturing. No foreign country should ever have a veto on our economic security. We should always make critical items here in the United States, and I want to bring as many of those jobs and industries back to Michigan. And finally, let us say it very clearly. We need an immigration system that actually works and is keyed to our economy. Immigrants are critical for our labor shortages, in our factories, in our hospitals, in our firms. More than that, we are a nation of immigrants. I'm standing here today because my great-grandfather left fear of persecution and death at 13 years old and found a place in America. So we need an immigration plan that brings legal, vetted immigrants into our countries, keyed to our economy, sometimes more, sometimes less. And we need to have border security that literally makes sense. Without immigrants, there is no America. And without immigrants, our economy will not thrive. Second, on healthcare. Is there anyone in America who thinks healthcare is working? Is there anyone in America who thinks we are paying too little for healthcare? Is there anyone in America who is missing the groundswell of anger because we cannot provide the healthcare we need to our parents and to our children? Few things are as fundamental. There are just, in my mind, few systems as broken as healthcare in America in 2025, and we all know it. This is, again, extremely personal to me. It's why I ran for office in the first place. Of all my time spent in war zones, in dangerous places, nothing was harder than my mom being diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer when she did not have insurance. There is nothing worse than that desperate feeling when your parent, that first parent to get sick, needs emergency tests and emergency surgery. And the same moment that you are fighting to get those things, you are struggling just to fill out the paperwork so she won't go bankrupt. We are at a breaking point. We must change our healthcare, and this is as good a time as any. Every American deserves access to healthcare they can afford, regardless of your job, regardless of your income or your age. So I support a nationwide public insurance plan at a reasonable price for every American. Second, we gotta be able to afford the medicines that we are prescribed. Is there anyone who thinks that we are paying too little for our drug prices? We need, in every part of our healthcare system, to be able to negotiate the price of our drugs. It's like Costco. You buy in bulk, you get a lower per unit price, and we are prohibited from doing that across the country. Why? Because I have never seen an issue in Washington more polluted by lobbyists and corporate PAC donations than this issue. I have never seen an industry with more control over elected leaders than on the issue of healthcare. Right now, I am one of 6 senators who doesn't take corporate PAC money, 6 out of 100. It should be 100 out of 100. The middle class does not have a lobbyist, but they sure have the leaders that they elected. On housing, There's nothing more foundational to the American dream than having a home of your own. It is as fundamental to us as Americans as apple pie. Right now, the average age of a first-time homeowner in America is 40 years old, completely different than in generations before us. This is not a good story. Today, we could declare in this body a housing state of emergency. We need 4 million units of housing built in our country. That's a national strategy, yes, but I want Michigan to be ground zero for responding to the urgency of that need. On education, we need schools that actually prepare our kids for the future. So much of what we were able to do as a middle class was because people could afford the education in front of them. If you wanted to go to college, you could. But in Michigan, you wanted to work with your hands, succeed, go on, become rich. Only if you had a high school diploma, you could do that. There were job options for you. We need an obsessive focus and reorganization of our job training federal programs. We have 17 different organizations doing job training. It's broken. We need to focus on trade schools and apprenticeships and an education system that prepares us for what is coming. On energy, we all know we're using more energy. Every single one of us in this room right now are using more energy than we did 10 years ago. Modern life is demanding it, but supply isn't meeting demand. And Michiganders are seeing that hitting their wallets every single day. If you don't plan now, it's going to get worse. Rolling blackouts and brownouts in a decade. And what I'm asking for is not a renewable energy plan or a fossil fuel plan. It's an all of the above energy plan. Natural gas, you can't do it without it. Nuclear, batteries, renewables, solar, hydropower, new stuff that's in creation right now. We need all of it. And we can't be willing to scrap certain energy because it's woke. Anyone who disagrees with that is just scoring political points and doesn't give a damn about people's electricity bills. On the environment, I'm committed to protecting the environment, especially our water. In Michigan, clean water and the Great Lakes are not partisan. It's our heritage. It's in our blood. No single Michigander lives more than 6 miles away from a lake or 82 miles from a Great Lake. We all know the sound of water hitting the beach or how the light looks up north. Our water is why people raise their kids in Michigan, and sharing that legacy with our kids is the dream that every Michigander has. We have the responsibility of being the stewards of the Great Lakes. So when our water is threatened, when our kids are poisoned, when they can't swim in contaminated lakes, it's not just a health issue. It's a security issue. Lead, PFAS, invasive species in our Great Lakes. These are threats to us as Michiganders, and it's my job to fight these threats. And last, can we just say that climate change is upon us? 20 years ago, it was theoretical. Now, Michiganders understand that extreme weather is real. It is here. They feel it in their pocketbooks. We have to mitigate it. We have to accept it. And we have to be ready to prepare ourselves when we have these crazy ice storms, these crazy once-in-a-generation tornadoes, and move on and not exclude people because they don't want to talk about, woke policies. Safety and security, finally. Every Michigander has the right to live free from fear, to feel safe in their own homes and in the country they love. That's what got me into public service in the very beginning, right after 9/11. Shootings in our schools and our businesses are a threat to our lives. Our government and our computers, our personal data shouldn't be hacked. Neither should our cars or our homes. And we should get to know and understand always who is coming across our border. We're a border state in Michigan. Every country in the world has the right to know who's coming inside its borders. So in the Senate, I'm going to spend my time protecting American citizens as I have always done. For that, we need the best military in the world, one that understands the threats that are coming around the corner, not just the threats of the past. We need to be able to control our own fate. That means not letting our national debt be controlled by countries like China. And we need to understand that to make people safe in America, we need a strong leadership role in the world. Because the next 100 years are either going to be dominated by the United States of America or by China. And while we make mistakes every single day, and I will own that, I served in Iraq and I saw it close up, I will take American leadership over Chinese leadership any day of the week. So In conclusion, let me just say that we all know, everyone here knows, that we're going through an extremely tough time in American politics. We know that when people look back on this period in history, they are going to say that was the moment that Americans were turned against each other, when neighbors turned against each other. But it is not the end, and it is not always going to be this way. As Michiganders, we understand how to survive bad times by rallying together, by helping one another, by living up to our Midwestern values, and getting back into the fight. As elected leaders, and certainly as a senator, I have a responsibility to chart the path through the dark tunnel and into the light, not by just complaining and whinging that it's all bad, but by charting a strategy from beginning to end on how we get through this moment. And we will. For God's sakes, people, the Detroit Lions are going to win the national championship and the Super Bowl, and they were in the toilet for years. So it is my privilege to stand on behalf of my state here. It is the most important thing I've ever done. It is the most impactful thing I will ever do. It is my job as that next generation of leader to change the course of this place and this country. And I commit to you, I will not let you down. Thank you very much, and I yield back.
The upcoming season of Love Island USA. What do you see?
Let's take a look. Oh, honey, look at you.
And those bombshells. Are they?
No. Yeah.
You're right. Yes!
Spots are flying.
Oh my gosh, this is so hot.
Oh, this comes off pretty easy.
Safe to say this season's looking pretty good.
Peacock's Love Island USA, streaming now, only on Peacock.
Actors, we can make you believe we know what we're doing, when in fact, we do not. Whoops, I have no idea what these buttons do.
I've never driven a stick in my life, but my heart is rolled yet!
Small business owner, because I have no idea what I'm doing. But GoDaddy Aero does, using AI to build a logo, website, and social content.
For Walton Goggins goggle glasses.
Because if your goggles ain't Goggins, they don't belong on your noggins. With GoDaddy Aero, it's like you know what you're doing.
At some point, you have to believe something. We've reinvented computing as we know it.
What is the vision for what you see coming next?
We asked ourselves, if it can do this, how far can it go?
How do we get from the robots that we have now to the future world that you see?
Cleo, everything that moves will be robotic someday, and it will be soon. We invested tens of billions of dollars before it really happened. No, that's very good. You did some research. But the big breakthrough, I would say, is when we...
That's Jensen Huang. And whether you know it or not, his decisions are shaping your future. He's the CEO of NVIDIA, the company that's skyrocketed over the past few years to become one of the most valuable companies in the world, because they led a fundamental shift in how computers work, unleashing this current explosion of what's possible with technology.
NVIDIA's done it again.
We found ourselves being one of the most important technology companies in the world and potentially ever.
A huge amount of the most futuristic tech that you're hearing about in AI and robotics and gaming and self-driving cars and breakthrough medical research relies on new chips and software designed by him and his company. During the dozens of background interviews that I did to prepare for this, what struck me most was how much Jensen Huang has already influenced all of our lives over the last 30 years, and how many said it's just the beginning of something even bigger. We all need to know what he's building and why, and most importantly, what he's trying to build next. Welcome to Huge Conversations. Thank you so much for doing this.
I'm so happy to do it.
Before we dive in, I wanted to tell you how this interview is going to be a little bit different than other interviews I've seen you do recently.
Okay.
I'm not going to ask you any questions about
You can ask me
company
anything
finances. Thank you. I'm not going to ask you questions about your management style or why you don't like one-on-ones. I'm not going to ask you about regulations or politics. I think all of those things are important, but I think that our audience can get them well covered elsewhere.
Okay.
What we do on Huge If True is we make optimistic explainer videos.
Mm-hmm.
And we've covered...
I'm the worst person to be an explainer video.
I think you might be the best. And that's what I'm really hoping that we can do together is make a joint explainer video about how can we actually use technology to make the future better.
Yeah.
And we do it because we believe that when people see those better futures, they help build them. So the people that you're going to be talking to are awesome. They are optimists who want to build those better futures. But because we cover so many different topics, we've covered supersonic planes and quantum computers and particle colliders. It means that millions of people come into every episode without any prior knowledge whatsoever. You might be talking to an expert in their field who doesn't know the difference between a CPU
Big
and a
trouble.
GPU.
Yeah.
Or a 12-year-old who might grow up one day to be you, but is just starting to learn. For my part, I've now been preparing for this interview for several months. Including doing background conversations with many members of your team, but I'm not an engineer. So my goal is to help that audience see the future that you see. So I'm going to ask about 3 areas. The first is, how did we get here? What were the key insights that led to this big fundamental shift in computing that we're in now? The second is, what's actually happening right now? Well, how did those insights lead to the world that we're now living in that seems like so much is going on all at once? And the third is, what is the vision for what you see coming next? In order to talk about this big moment we're in with AI, I think we need to go back to video games in the 90s.
I look different. I play different.
Boxing's the wild west of sport.
This isn't a normal world.
Winning doesn't happen by accident. Winning becomes a lifestyle.
Volleyball here is a state treasure.
Representing Nebraska has meant everything to me.
You're the greatest defense ever to play the game.
We've given them an opportunity to dream.
At the time, I know game developers wanted to create more realistic-looking graphics, but the hardware couldn't keep up with all of that necessary math.
Not enough math.
NVIDIA came up with a solution that would change not just games, but computing itself. Could you take us back there and explain what was happening and what were the insights that led you and the NVIDIA team to create the first modern GPU?
So in the early 90s, when we first started the company, we observed that in a software program, inside it, there are just a few lines of code. Maybe 10% of the code does 99% of the processing. And that 99% of the processing could be done in parallel. However, the other 90% of the code has to be done sequentially. It turns out that the proper computer, the perfect computer, is one that could do sequential processing and parallel processing, not just one or the other. That was the big observation. And we set out to build a company to solve computer problems that normal computers can't. And that's really the beginning of NVIDIA.
My favorite visual of why a CPU versus a GPU really matters so much is a 15-year-old video on the NVIDIA YouTube channel, where the Mythbusters, they use a little robot shooting paintballs one by one to show solving problems one at a time, or sequential processing on a CPU. But then they roll out this huge robot that shoots all of the paintballs at once, doing smaller problems all at the same time, or parallel processing on a GPU.
3, 2, 1.
So NVIDIA unlocks all of this new power for video games. Why gaming first?
The video games requires parallel processing for processing 3D graphics. And we chose video games because, one, we loved the application. It's a simulation of virtual worlds, and who doesn't want to go to virtual worlds? And we had the good observation that video games has potential to be the largest market for entertainment ever. And it turned out to be true. And having it being a large market is important because the technology is complicated. And if we had a large market, our R&D budget could be large. We could create new technology. And that flywheel between technology and market and greater technology was really the flywheel that got NVIDIA to become one of the most important technology companies in the world. And it was all because of video games.
I've heard you say that GPUs were a time machine.
Yeah.
Could you tell me more about what you meant by that?
A GPU is like a time machine because it lets you see the future sooner. One of the most amazing things anybody's ever said to me was a quantum chemistry scientist. He said, Jensen, because of NVIDIA's work, I can do my life's work in my lifetime. That's time travel. He was able to do something that was beyond his lifetime, within his lifetime. And that's because we make applications run so much faster. And so you get to see the future. And so when you're doing weather prediction, for example, you're seeing the future. When you're doing a simulation, a virtual city with virtual traffic, and we're simulating our self-driving car through that virtual city, we're doing time travel.
So parallel processing takes off in gaming. And it's allowing us to create worlds in computers that we never could have before. And gaming is sort of this first incredible case of parallel processing unlocking a lot more power. And then, as you said, people begin to use that power across many different industries. The case of the quantum chemistry researcher. when I've heard you tell that story, it's that he was running molecular simulations in a way where it was much faster to run in parallel on NVIDIA GPUs even then than it was to run them on the supercomputer with the CPU that he had been using before.
Yeah, that's true.
So, oh my God, it's revolutionizing all of these other industries as well. It's beginning to change how we see what's possible with computers. And my understanding is that in the early 2000s, you see this and you realize that actually doing that is a little bit difficult because what that researcher had to do is he had to sort of trick the GPUs into thinking that his problem was a graphics problem.
That's exactly right. No, that's very good. Well,
So you
did some research.
So you create a way to make that a lot easier.
That's right.
Specifically, it's a platform called CUDA, which lets programmers tell the GPU what to do using programming languages that they already know, like C. And that's a big deal because it gives way more people easier access to all of this computing power. Could you explain what the vision was that led you to create CUDA?
Partly researchers discovering it, partly internal inspiration, and partly solving a problem. And a lot of interesting ideas come out of that soup. Some of it is
with Verizon Home Device Protect. When coffee meets keyboard, we cover it. When an alley-oop becomes an alley-oops, we cover it. Pet tech? Yeah, we got you. And when an install is beyond your skills, get professional installation on us. Plus 24/7 tech support and hassle-free repairs or replacements. Get the protection plan that covers all your eligible home tech for just $25 a month. Verizon Home Device Protect.
aspiration and inspiration. Some of it is just desperation, and so in the case of CUDA, it was very much the same way. And probably the first external ideas of using our GPUs for parallel processing emerged out of some interesting work in medical imaging. A couple of researchers at Mass General were using it to do CT reconstruction. They were using our graphics processors for that reason, and it inspired us. Meanwhile, the problem that we're trying to solve inside our company has to do with the fact that when you're trying to create these virtual worlds for video games, you would like it to be beautiful, but also dynamic. Water should flow like water, and explosions should be like explosions. So there's particle physics you want to do, fluid dynamics you want to do, and that is much harder to do if your pipeline is only able to do computer graphics. And so we have a natural reason to want to do it in the market that we were serving. So researchers were also horsing around with using our GPUs for general purpose acceleration. And so there are multiple factors that were coming together in that soup. When the time came, and we decided to do something proper and create a CUDA as a result of that. Fundamentally, the reason why I was certain that CUDA was going to be successful, and we put the whole company behind it, was because fundamentally, our GPU was going to be the highest volume parallel processors built in the world because the market of video games was so large. And so this architecture has a good chance of reaching many people.
It has seemed to me like creating CUDA was this incredibly optimistic, huge if true thing to do, where you were saying, if we create a way for many more people to use much more computing power, they might create incredible things. And then, of course, it came true. They did. In 2012, a group of 3 researchers submits an entry to a famous competition where the goal is to create computer systems that could recognize images and label them with categories. And their entry just crushes the competition. It gets way fewer answers wrong. It was incredible. It blows everyone away. It's called AlexNet, and it's a kind of AI called a neural network. My understanding is one reason it was so good is that they used a huge amount of data to train that system. And they did it on NVIDIA GPUs. All of a sudden, GPUs weren't just a way to make computers faster and more efficient. They're becoming the engines of a whole new way of computing. We're moving from instructing computers with step-by-step directions to training computers to learn by showing them a huge number of examples. This moment in 2012 really kicked off this truly seismic shift that we're all seeing with AI right now. Could you describe what that moment was like from your perspective? And what did you see it would mean for all of our futures?
When you create something new like CUDA, if you build it, they might not come. And that's always the cynic's perspective. However, the optimist perspective would say, but if you don't build it, they can't come. And that's usually how we look at the world. You know, we have to reason about intuitively why this would be very useful. And in fact, in 2012, Elissa Slotkin and Alex Krzyzewski and Jeff Hinton in the University of Toronto, the lab that they were at, they reached out to a GeForce GTX 580 because they learned about CUDA and that CUDA might be able to be used as a parallel processor for training AlexNet. And so our inspiration that GeForce could be the vehicle to bring out this parallel architecture into the world, and that researchers would somehow find it someday was a good strategy. It was a strategy based on hope, but it was also reasoned hope. The thing that really caught our attention was simultaneously we were trying to solve the computer vision problem inside the company, and we were trying to get CUDA to be a good computer vision processor. And we were frustrated by a whole bunch of early developments internally with respect to our computer vision effort and getting CUDA to be able to do it. And all of a sudden, we saw AlexNet, this new algorithm that is completely different than computer vision algorithms before it, take a giant leap in terms of capability for computer vision. And when we saw that, it was partly out of interest, but partly because we were struggling with something ourselves. And so we were highly interested to want to see it work. And so when we looked at AlexNet, we were inspired by that. But the big breakthrough, I would say, is when we saw AlexNet, we asked ourselves, you know, how far can AlexNet go? If it can do this with computer vision, how far can it go? And if it could go to the limits of what we think it could go, the type of problems it could solve, what would it mean for the computer industry, and what would it mean for the computer architecture? And we rightfully reasoned that if machine learning, if deep learning architecture can scale, the vast majority of machine learning problems could be.
Do you know what's really fun? Making a website on Wix.
Hey, we're How Ridiculous, 3 childhood friends and digital content creators that do epic stuff from Perth, Australia.
We've got about 50 million followers. We're in the billions of views, and we're a small team. We always felt like our content was all about entertainment and being fun, but there was also this, sort of professional business side. One of the things that we knew was basically essential was getting our own website. So people would actually see a proper official group who mean business and who can deliver. And we now get unbelievable opportunities to do things like film balloon popping races with Manchester City. I don't know all the things that we're going to get to do in the next year or 5 years, but if we can do this as a job, anything's possible.
So you found an awesome job post, but your resume is outdated? No worries. With Adobe Acrobat Pro's super easy editing tools, you can quickly make updates right in the PDF without needing to find the original Word doc. Just click what you want to modify, and in seconds, you'll have a resume that you can feel confident in. Now go land that dream job with Adobe Acrobat. Start your free 7-day trial now.
Represented with deep neural networks. And the type of problems we could solve with machine learning is so vast that it has the potential of reshaping the computer industry altogether, and which prompted us to re-engineer the entire computing stack, which is where DGX came from, and this little baby DGX sitting here. All of this came from that observation that we ought to reinvent the entire computing stack layer by layer by layer. Computers, after 65 years since IBM System 360 introduced modern general purpose computing. We've reinvented computing as we know it.
To think about this as a whole story. So parallel processing reinvents modern gaming and revolutionizes an entire industry. Then that way of computing, that parallel processing, begins to be used across different industries. You invest in that by building CUDA. And then CUDA and the use of GPUs allows for a step change in neural networks and machine learning and begins a sort of revolution that we're now seeing only increase in importance today.
All of a sudden, computer vision is solved. All of a sudden, speech recognition is solved. All of a sudden, language understanding is solved. These incredible problems associated with intelligence, one by one by one by one, where we had no solutions for in the past, desperate desire to have solutions for, all of a sudden, one after another gets solved, every couple of years. It's incredible.
Yeah, so you're seeing that in 2012. You're looking ahead and